a mat from the Dollar Tree. This is a dish drying mat. The first thing I did is I removed all of the tacks. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to baste it with some glue. It's quilt basting, so it will not move on me because I don't want to pin it. Okay, then I'm going to take my fabric, my first piece of fabric. I took my fabric and I cut it to about the size of my dish drying mat. It's actually a little bit bigger, but once I sew, I'm going to be trimming it, okay? So the first thing I did is I sprayed my dish drying mat with some quilt baste so the mat will stay adhered to my fabric, okay? I cut 2 pieces of fabric, and if your fabric is directional, make sure that you take your second piece of fabric, and when you lay it on top of your first piece, you want to make sure that you have it going the correct way if it is a directional fabric. Okay, so both pieces of my fabric are face to face. The mat is adhered to the wrong side of my fabric, and I am going to take some pins and I'm going to kind of put them in the middle of my project. I'm just going to attach them through all 3 layers, but I'm not going to put them on the edges. I want my material to stay in place. I don't want it to shift on me. Later, I'm going to quilt it, but for now, I'm just going to be sewing around the edges. Okay, so the first thing I did is I got my dish drying mat and I put my fabric on top of it with my wrong side of my fabric down. Then I put another piece of fabric on top, and what I'm doing is I am taking a dish drying mat from the Dollar Tree and I'm covering it in fabric, and I'm going to use it for a mat for my sewing machine and for my serger. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this over. Let's see. Yeah, I don't like the way that's done. Okay. I'm going to put this together again because I do not like the way the fabric is set up. I need to adjust it. You want to make sure that you have plenty of fabric all the way around. Okay, so first you lay your mat down. I'm going to spray it with some glue basting stuff, some quilt basting spray. But I want to make sure that I have fabric all around. I don't want it to be, I need room for my seams. So your first piece of fabric you put face up on top of your mat. Let me see if that is in a good position. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, then you take your second piece of fabric, making sure if it's directional, you want it face to face. And my dish drying mat is on the very bottom. Okay, then I'm going to scatter pins but I'm not going to put the pins where I'm going to stitch at. I'm just going to put them kind of in the middle. My first layer is basted down, but I don't want my other layers to move. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch all the way around, but I'm going to leave an opening for turning. And what I am doing is I am making a mat to go under my sewing machine or under my serger. And what that will do is it will help keep my sewing machine from making a lot of noise. If you maybe are sewing and you have young children at home and you maybe sew while they're sleeping and you don't want to wake them up, or you live in an apartment. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over. Let me pull my string out. Okay. So welcome to my sewing, my sewing tutorial. And I'm going to be sewing all the way around my project. I'm going to start here on the corner. I'm going to put my needle down. Let's see, I have my stitch length at about a 3. Where I begin, I'm going to go forward and then backwards. Uh-oh. Not good. Y'all, I'm using a new thread, and I do not like it. It is Coates and Clark, and my needle just came undone. Okay. Now, if you're here and you would like to hear about sewing, you are welcome to stay. And if you're here and you're just trying to be ugly, you're going to be deleted and you're going to be blocked. This is a community for sewing and nothing else. So excuse me just a minute. Hi, Silly Lily. Nice to meet you. Okay. Hi there. All right. Let me see if I can get this threaded again. I apologize. I'm going to blame it on this thread. I had a terrible time winding my bobbin, and I'm having a terrible time now. But when I get going, this is a very easy project to do, and you can actually do it with fat quarters from the Dollar Tree. I'm doing mine with material that I bought from Joann. I bought it a while back. Y'all, I have an automatic needle threader, but I do not like to use it. And I usually don't have any trouble threading my sewing machine. And tonight, I had trouble. Okay, I think that got it. No, it didn't. Okay. This is going to be a very long tutorial. I may need to just film it instead of doing it live. Yeah. Oh, my apologies. Nobody's going to want to watch this take this long. Okay, so Lily, do you sew? Okay. I hope that got it. And I hope that'll be the end of it. Okay. All right, once again, it's threaded. All right, let me try again. So I have my dish drying mat down, and I am going to start at the edge. Make sure I'm going to sink my needle. Okay. Now I'm going to back up, and I'm going to sew down my first side. I have my presser foot lined up with the edge of my dish drying mat. I'm going to go all the way to the end. And then I'm going to put my needle down, and I'm going to turn my work. And I'm going to begin stitching on my next side. Okay. Okay, now I've got my needle down, and once again, I pivoted. Gonna make sure all three of my layers are nice and straight. This is a dish drying mat from the Dollar Tree. And I am covering it in fabric, and I am making it into a mat, which will be to go under my different sewing machines or to go under my serger. Okay, so I've sewed around the three sides. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to sew about a quarter of the way, and I'm going to back stitch. This is my last side, and then I'm going to come here, and I'm going to sew, I'm going to back stitch, because I want to leave a hole or an area for turning my work. And you want it to be strong, so you have to back stitch to make it strong, because you're going to stick your hand in there to turn your work. So I'm going backwards and forwards a few times to make sure it's strong. Then I'm going to go ahead and take my work out. I'm going to clip the strings, and I'm going to go leaving an area about the size of my hand. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to sew to the edge. Make sure I have a space big enough. Yep, that looks plenty big. So I'm going to sew all the way to the edge, but right here where I'm beginning, I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to go forward and I'm going to back stitch because that needs to be strong. Okay, so I'm all the way to the other side, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches because this is where this part is going to end. Okay, so I'm taking my work out. I'm going to trim my threads, and what I'm going to do, let's see. I'm going to turn my work over so I'm looking at the back side. And what this does is it shows me where I stopped and where I started. So now I'm going to pull all of my pins out. I don't need my pins anymore because this is going to be held together now because it's already stitched. So I'm pulling all my pins out, and the next step is I'm going to get my pinking shears. And if you don't have pinking shears, you can use regular scissors. And I am going to cut about a 1/4 inch seam all the way around my project. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm cutting the excess material away. So it gives me a little, like a zigzag edge, which is going to keep it from fraying inside of my project. Now right now I'm cutting where I stopped and started. So I want to make sure that where my material, where I turned, where I left that hole for turning my material, I want to make sure I do not trim that part yet, because we're going to need to have material that we can use to turn under to make our seam. But everywhere else, I'm trimming around, making about a 1/4 inch, maybe a 1/4 to 1/2 inch seam. My material is not very thick, so it shouldn't be too bulky. I have to trim all the way around, then I can turn my work, and you can see what the pad is going to look like. I got the drying mat from the Dollar Tree, and the fabric I got from Joann's, but you could actually get fat quarters from the Dollar Tree. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. I've got it pink. The pinking shears is trimmed. I have to trim off this one little spot, and then I'm going to stick my hand in this section to turn it right side out. Okay? So here's what it looks like. I've got my drying mat on this side. I've got my fabric on this side. And now I'm going to reach in and we're going to turn the mat where we can see what it's going to look like now. And we're covering the dish drying mat in fabric. And when I get finished, I'm going to quilt it together so it will stay together. So this project, you could actually, if you have a sewing machine, you could do this project for about $4 if you used fabric from the Dollar Tree. So, but my fabric, it came from Joann's, and I probably bought it, I'm not sure when I bought it, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And I love that it has a sewing motif. It has sewing machines, tape measure. Okay. All right. So at this point, you could iron your project. I'm gonna kind of just do it with my hands like this, mashing it flat, going around here. I'm gonna take this and mash my seams flat so it gives me nice edges. Then I'm going to push back in again, make sure my corners are turned out. Okay. Let's see. Now one side is stuck together from the basting spray, but the other side was not basted. So I can still stick my fingers in and straighten that out. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have. And now it's time, this fabric that I left to stick my fingers in, now it's time for me to fold that down. Okay, I'm going to fold it down. Let's see. Okay. This would be a good time. You could use an iron to fold this down. But I am just going to turn it and fold it down and try to match up my seams so they'll be straight. I need to go a little further. Actually, I'm going to trim. Let me trim just a little bit. I'm going to trim the edge of the dish drying mat. And I'm actually going to take a regular pair of scissors because I trimmed around everywhere else. I want to trim just a little bit right here. Make sure I'm not cutting my fabric. So I'm just trimming the little edge off of the dish drying mat because when I fold my seams and then I stitch the hole closed, I don't want it to be real bulky, okay? I want it to look like the rest of the drying mat. Okay, so I trimmed that off. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to fold my fabric, and then I'm going to clip it together, and I'm going to stitch all the way around my mat. Okay. It's going to take me a minute because I want this to be, I don't want you to be able to tell where I turned this fabric in. And that's why I had to cut the little piece of my dish drying mat off. Now, this is a dish drying mat that I have covered with material. And what I have done is it is going to be a mat that can go underneath my sewing machine, or it can go under my serger. When I use my serger, I usually take my serger into the kitchen, and I do that on my kitchen table. And a serger has a lot of vibrations, just like a sewing machine that's heavy duty. So it can make noise. If you live in an apartment, or if you like to sew at night and you have your family sleeping or anything like that, it's really good to have a mat underneath your sewing machine that will kind of muffle the noise. So, okay, so this is what it looks like. This is my dish drying mat, completely encased. And now I'm going to top stitch around all of the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this corner, and I've got my presser foot is lined up with the edge. I'm holding on to my strings, or my threads, I should say. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch in the beginning, and then I'm going to proceed to stitching all the way around. So if you weren't here in the beginning, let me let you know that this is a dish drying mat, and you just lay your mat down, you spray some quilt basting spray, you lay a piece of fabric down that completely covers it up, and you put the back side of the fabric on the mat, and then you take another piece of fabric, lay it on top face to face, and you just stitch all the way around. And what this does is it encases the dish drying mat. Okay, so now I've got my needle down, and I'm going to pivot. And now I'm sewing one of my shorter sides. Okay, going all the way to the corner. Got my needle down. Okay, now I'm gonna double check that this part, that I have my seams just as close to straight as I can, because this is where I had to turn my work. So I had to leave that open. Okay. When you get this stitched, you can always take whatever side looks the best, and that can be the front. And of course, your sewing machine is going to be sitting on the mat. So okay. Oh, I think this is the most fiddly little part. Let me go to here. Okay. Stretch. Okay, now let me get this last little edge. Oops. I think I went off track a little bit. But for that reason, I'm using dark blue thread. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, so what I have is a mat that I can put my sewing machine or my serger on. And the only thing that I'm going to do now, I've stitched all the way around, and I can leave it just like this, or I can go ahead and do some just straight stitch lines. And what that will do is it will just hold the layers together if you want to wash it, or if you want to, it can be done just like this. Okay, so I apologize. I was so slow getting started on my tutorial, but this is Nana with Sew It Seams, and I thank you very much for being here.